Nikki Fried becomes chair of Florida Democratic Party and what that means to LGBTQ plus community. It's breaking news when former Florida Agriculture and Consumer Affairs Commissioner Nikki Fried is elected to chair the Florida Democratic Party on Saturday. Fried is well known in the Florida LGBTQ plus community as being the only statewide elected official as a Democrat in more than a decade. She's an avid LGBTQ plus advocate. She was in a highly competitive primary race for governor with Congressman Charlie Crist. Fried created the first ever LGBTQ plus consumer advocate in Florida history. First, Nik Harris, who went on to the HRC, and then Nathan Bruemmer, who this weekend became the president of the Florida LGBTQ plus Democratic Caucus. This new position for Fried is critically important to the Florida LGBTQ plus community. The FDP was widely criticized for the landslide defeat seen in the midterm elections. The FDP is the state's strength for issues like voter turnout, candidate recruitment, and vital campaign fundraising support. The FDP is also instrumental in uniting the core base of Florida Democrats, which include a coalition of LGBTQ+, women, Black, religious, diversity, Latino, Gen Z, and millennials, plus other minority groups. Moments after the news of Nikki Fried's victory, Queer News Tonight's lead anchor, Al Ferguson, spoke to Fried about these issues and what's next for the LGBTQ+ community in Florida.
Al Ferguson with Queer News Tonight, and I'm at the Florida LGBTQ Democratic Caucus here in Orlando. The state convention is going on. I have been to this event all over the state many times, but tonight is an exciting one for us. Guest needs no introduction, Nikki Fried, with former Commissioner of Agriculture and Consumer Affairs, and ran for governor in this recent cycle. Thank you for joining us at Queer News Tonight.
Well, thanks for having me again.
We are very excited. In all of the times that we've talked about, aside from you being governor, I can't possibly imagine, and what you did at Consumer Affairs, of course, but I can't imagine you taking on a role any more important for the LGBTQ community than what we're doing in breaking news right now. You're the new chairman of the Democratic Party of Florida, the Florida Democratic Party.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
You know, I have sat in a day long of sessions. I have sat for months and months and months of conversation where everybody wrung their hands of what happened in the midterms and what we witnessed. And gosh, there were a lot of fingers that pointed back to the Florida Democratic Party. For our LGBT viewers that might not understand the importance of the Florida Democratic Party for elections in Florida, kind of explain what they do and why they're so important.
You know, the Democratic Party, or really any party, is supposed to be helping to create the boots on the ground. That means that they are supposed to be helping to organize our Democratic clubs and our caucuses, our local DECs is what they're called, executive committees. And it's really, really important that the party is strong because, one, we're recognizing there has been too many decades that we aren't talking to the people, that we've been taking groups for granted, that we just think because we're in a blue county, like, just get out the vote and just worry about the Dems. Or if you were in a red area, just do as much as you can. And that has to stop. And we've got to give the people of our state, the Democrats of our state, and those MPAs and those that aren't with us, a reason to get out of bed and vote for us. That means we have to rebrand, we have to get new messaging, and so the party is here, one, to help with voter registration, to help with voter recruitment, help with messaging on the ground, training for all of our leadership, training for our candidates. It's a really important role that when it fails, you see what happened in November.
It's interesting to me from my seat outside this fishbowl, but reporting on it extensively. It seems like to do the kinds of things that you talked about, it's like everything in Florida. It requires money.
Yep.
And the Florida Democratic Party was really very instrumental in its need to raise money, support candidates, deepen the bench,
Yep.
find better and better candidates, and then do the kind of training that you just talked about to win the elections. We reported extensively at Queer News Tonight, DeSantis won the first time around by 14,000 votes. He wins the second time around by like 1.8 million. That's an indication that there was some organization on the ground that was not in the same kind of organization on
Yep.
the other side. Your you're not the solution. I wouldn't put that on your shoulders.
Thank you.
Right, exactly. But you're the quarterback, and it's just hours in our breaking news. It's just hours that you're the new quarterback. You're replacing Tom Brady, and no pressure, no pressure at all. But do I get that assessment correct, that the Florida Democratic Party, that's the role that they really need, that is bigger than most of the candidates, and what's going on?
I look at the role of chair as kind of a twofold. One, it is that cheerleader. It's going around, it's creating hope, it's creating inspiration, it's creating ideas, but it's the cheerleader of the whole party. But the other thing is, it's also the CEO of a corporation, and making sure that everybody who's underneath is doing their jobs, that we have accountability and transparency, and that we're working on all these different aspects. And what's happened is, we've had, every 2 years we keep going through these chairs elections, and everybody wants to blame the party. Everybody wants to blame the party. And I'm going to come in and say, look, we can only blame the party if you don't come with me. That this is an opportunity, because I see things differently too. I'm a strategist at heart. I'm a policy wonk and strategist. And so coming into this role, I see how we can organize better, how we bring in our clubs and our caucuses, and making sure that we don't have these silos that are happening all over the state. And I've said this to you, especially in 2023. We have so many issues that are boiling up here in our state, whether it's our education and going after, our gay community in schools, and now it's diversity in our schools and higher education, and the permitless carry that's about to, that the legislature and the governor want to pass, which I, as the one who just oversaw the concealed carry program, this is a very dangerous step for our state. To going to changing again how we vote and how we get citizens initiative. It's everything is going after the media. I mean, last week there's actually a new piece of legislation who takes away a lot of your roles coming and holding people like me accountable. Yeah. And so there's all these different things, but what I think fundamentally we have to do is come together. Because can you imagine a march down Monroe, that it is not just Moms Demand Action, and it's not just our LGBTQ plus community, and it's not just our Everytown, and it's not just our NAACP and our Urban League, but we all march together. The imagery of all the colors that you would see and everybody wearing their shirts, and you walk down and you march together for democracy and freedom, that's what I'm bringing to the table.
It's interesting, Nikki, may I call you
Please.
Nikki? Yes. It's interesting that you say that in terms of us coming together. Nikki Fried is the only statewide elected official from the Dems in, 15 years? Something like that. I mean, longer than most of our viewers, have been barely alive. So you know what you're talking about because you've walked the walk and you've talked the talk. Your situation is also interesting to me in that you know how to do this and you know what it takes to get the job done. I think your illustration of CEO is really quite on point in terms of what you're going to do. Help everyone understand. I've heard so many of your stump speeches about LGBT. You're an ally, an incredible ally for our community, our LGBTQ community. Thanks you for that. But just tell people briefly why LGBT is so important to you in Florida.
And as you know, I've said this story numerous times. When I was 16 or 17 years old in high school, my stepbrother came out to me, and I remember his journey. I remember his journey of what he had to go through coming out, and this would have been in the mid-1990s. I always want to say I would hope that times today are different than the times they were back then, but unfortunately, it seems like we're going backwards in a lot of ways. But this is family to me. And watching his journey, I knew that we had to stand up, we had to unite, and so my entire, outside of that, when I became student body president of the University of Florida, I created a Pride student cabinet position, made sure when I became commissioner of agriculture that we had an LGBTQ advocate, expanded my anti-discrimination policy in the workforce, and have always been an ally because this truly is family, and this is personal to me.
It's interesting to me, Nikki probably doesn't even know this. On Monday, our lead story at queernewstonight is going to be breaking news that Tampa Pride, which is the last weekend in March, has received a letter from Governor DeSantis to say at the Tampa Pride Parade on 7th Avenue in Ybor City cannot have any drag queens participate in the parade, and that it is a violation of whatever the legislative intent of whatever he's pursuing on drag queens now applies to this Pride Parade. Now, I just point out as we do this breaking news on Monday that this is happening. Hotspots Magazine and Happening Out Television produces the Stonewall Pride Parade, which you have been to. And I'm sitting here wondering, well, I wonder what we're going to do about drag queens. As I am very sure there's no legislative law in Florida that says drag queens cannot be riding in a parade. The issue that this illustrates is if Nikki Fried was currently the governor of Florida,
I'd be in the parade.
Right. You would be in the parade and not legislating drag queens out of the parade. Now, wherever that ends up, it ends up. But it's a simple illustration of how important what is going on around us. What we're watching affects all of us. And
Absolutely.
if we think it doesn't, it clearly does. Hence, we come back to your seat, chairman of the Florida Democratic Party. Your process of doing this, do you hit the streets running, or you've got some organizational structure or reorganization to do? Which is it going to be?
It's going to be all of the above. I mean, already we're going to be putting out fundraising emails. To your point, fundraising is going to be important. And we're going to be asking Democrats and people that are angry, frustrated, and disappointed and scared of what's happening here in the state of Florida to donate $5 a month. That's one Starbucks run a month, until hopefully we gain their trust back. And then maybe next year it's $25 a month. And start gaining some of that momentum on the ground. Instead of people yelling about things on Twitter, take that anger, take that frustration, and put it to work. So we're going to hit the ground running. But of course, as a new CEO, have to come in and make sure I'm looking under the hood, seeing what plans are already in place. Because here's the other thing I want to make sure, that if in fact the previous chair had plans that were in motion that just didn't have time to catch, I also don't want to start over either. If there are things that were being done already that I think are good ideas, I want to make sure we go forward. But it's going to be all of it. It's going to be hitting the ground running. It's going to be coming up with a transition team. It's going to be making sure that we've got a plan in place for the next couple of years, then going out and making sure that we're funding it.
Yeah. Well, we're in good hands. I'm quite sure we're in good hands. We thank you for your support of LGBTQ community. Very interesting, even in light of this breaking news of the election today for Florida Democratic Party. You've made time twice to come to the LGBT Democratic Caucus. Our community deserves supporting Nikki Fried, because we have Nikki Fried's support.
You will have my undying support forever.
And last recommendation, Miss Fried is driving to Tallahassee after this incredibly long weekend to get home. You've just been elected. You get to drive like probably 7 hours or whatever it is. You get to take tomorrow off, and Monday you hit the road working.
Yes, that's the plan.
For the LGBT in all of Florida. Congratulations
Thank
to
you.
You give us a lot of confidence that our future is going to be brighter than what yesterday was.
I appreciate all that you're doing. Thank you.
Al Ferguson with Queer News Tonight. LGBTQ plus news is vital for our community and for the broader world as a whole. We have enough enemies at Fox News. Tucker, Sean, and Laura are loud. We need passionate allies. Happening Out Television Network, Queer News Tonight, and It's Happening Out are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. Our community needs your support. Like this broadcast and subscribe now to ensure the growth of the entire LGBTQ plus community.